So, I listened to a podcast this morning. We were talking about politics and talking about Senate, Congress, all kinds of stuff, right? It's the fun things I like to listen to. And they were talking about this bill that was presented in the Senate that I hadn't even heard of. It was presented by Ben Sass, and it was put out there to get voted on to see whether or not they actually wanted to vote on it. In other words, they were voting, and this was like just Monday or Tuesday of this week, they were voting on whether or not it would make it to the next level to be, voted on yay or nay. So basically, do they table it now or do they let it go through? Now this bill was basically kind of in response to a lot of the bills that have been coming out. The one that happened in New York, the bill that they tried to push through in Virginia, and there's been some other ones popping up around the country. These abortion bills that basically say a baby can be killed up to birth and all this other stuff, right? So, because these bills are now starting to pop up and they're out there, one issue, because people like the governor of Virginia and several others have made statements that imply that it would be okay if a baby was actually born alive in spite of an attempted abortion, that they could just, leave the baby there on the table and just not give it any medical treatment and the baby would just die. So this bill basically said, look, if a baby survives abortion and is born and is outside of the mother and is alive, which does happen. This does happen. You can look up survivors of abortion. You can Google it. You can look it up on YouTube. You'll see people who sit there and talk about how they were a survivor of abortion. Their mother tried to abort them. They survived anyway. This is something that happens. It is not the norm, but it does happen. This bill just says, look, if this happens, because of all these bills going on around out there, we don't want the baby to not be treated. We don't want the doctor to just ignore the child and let it sit there and die. Just like it wouldn't be acceptable in any other scenario, in any other case, with any other patient, in any other operating room or doctor's office, where a doctor would just stand back and let a patient die and give no treatment. That doctor would lose their medical license, they would be sued for malpractice, and they would probably go to prison. This bill just said, hey, if a baby does survive the abortion and is born alive, you have to treat that baby the same way you would any other human being. You have to give them medical treatment. If you don't, you will suffer the same consequences as if you had done the same thing to anybody else. That's all this bill said. Now, all the Democrats voted to table this bill. They all voted to push this bill aside so they didn't have to vote yay or nay, because they all knew how they'd vote, and they all knew how horrible and evil and twisted it would look if they actually voted what they actually think. So instead they just chose to kind of push the bill aside and ignore it and pretend like it doesn't exist. So they didn't push through a law, they didn't even vote on a law that would protect babies. Babies actually born, babies that have survived, they are alive, they are outside of the mother. A bill that just says you can't leave the baby on a table to fucking die. Is this where we are now as a country? This is acceptable? That our elected officials can't even come together to say, yeah, once a baby's born, regardless of how you feel about abortion, we can't just leave a baby there to die. That's murder. In every other case, that's murder. If a mother, fresh out of the hospital, leaves her baby to just sit there and does not give it any assistance or feed it or anything, and that baby dies, that mother goes to prison. If a doctor does this to any other patient, the doctor gets sued, loses their license, and goes to prison. This is murder. This is where we are now as the United States of America. It's okay to kill the most innocent and delicate of our people. A newborn baby. That's okay. That's okay. We don't want to defend that. we don't want to defend the sanctity of life. But, oh no. If you own a gun, well, if these laws that ban AR-15s can just save one child, we've got to do something. You want to know how you can save a few million? And look, I know a lot of people, everybody knows I'm pro-life. I know a lot of people who are pro-choice. I know a lot of people who watch my channel are pro-choice. But a lot of people don't understand what's going on. They've done polls, they've done research. People who are pro-choice, most people who are pro-choice would never have an abortion. They always say, well, I wouldn't do it, or I wouldn't want my significant other to do it. But I think a woman should be able to choose. Most people actually are against abortion. But they fall into that, well, it's none of my business, so you can do what you want kind of thing. Most people are actually against abortion. Most pro-choice people are against abortion. But this is where we are now. This isn't Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade only covered first trimester abortions. You want to go back to Roe v. Wade? All these people screaming, oh, they're going to do something to Roe v. Wade. Hell, I'd be happy if you just went back to Roe v. Wade. Can we just go back to that? First trimester abortions? Good God. Now we're talking about letting babies die after they're born. We can't even get anybody to agree that that's wrong. Look, if you're pro-choice, you need to understand what is happening. You need to understand that you are now complicit with this shit if you're voting for the people who can't even be bothered to vote on whether or not a baby born alive deserves a little attention, a little medical treatment, and isn't just left on an operating table to die. You are complicit in this if you are voting for these evil fuckers. How do you not understand that? How is this now a question? The left is just a death cult at this point. They seem dead set on killing babies. Like, you can just talk about all kinds of things. You can talk about trade, and you can talk about the economy, and you can call them idiots and whatever else. The minute you try to stop a baby from dying, good Lord, they get up in arms, man. They are dead set on killing them some babies. Whatever, man. This is where we're at. If you care, if you actually care, it's time to stand up and do something. It's time to stand up and say something. Stop voting for evil. You're pro-choice. Good, that's fine. Be pro-choice. Can we roll it back to Roe v. Wade at least? Can we stop pushing it further and further down the tracks? Can we not just sit here and say that a newborn baby at least deserves to live?